Welcome back, everybody. Lacie, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Are you still sore from last week?
No, my mind is sore. I'm having to study for finals next week.
Oh no, really?
Yep.
Guess who does not have to study for tests?
Well, that's great for you.
It's because I'm really old.
And wise. Old and
And
wise.
old and wise, that's right. Anyway, welcome back, everybody. This is episode 3. Um, uh, Today we're transitioning from rec ball, right, to
Mhm.
travel ball. Now, not everyone's experience, those of you that are listening to this, who may be starting out in softball, or maybe you've gone through travel ball or, college, um, you know, everyone's situation is different, right? So we chose to go into travel ball at 9 years old.
9 years old, like right after the AU All-Star team.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so and that was a particular choice we made, and there's a specific reason why, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But, um, Lace, just top of your head, what your first thoughts of travel ball? Like, what were your first thoughts?
My first thoughts of travel ball, I mean, it was definitely a not just a physical shift,
Hmm.
but mental shift. Because now
Well,
it's just not fun and games anymore. It's like, let's win, and we have a goal in mind, go to the national championship and win.
right.
And I'm 9 years old, so it's hard to process. But I think since we had such a good relationship with Coach Chris coming from All Stars, we kind of were all on the same page.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but I I was gonna ask, like, what was the conversation like with Coach Chris, like as a parent?
Yeah, great question, right? Because we have to make that decision because travel ball is not cheap.
No, no,
Right.
no.
And it is time consuming. Well, we find out later it's very time consuming, but we were thrilled, right?
Mm.
Coach Chris, who coached travel ball up in Oregon and was very successful up there, and then he moved down here to Southern California, and he did the rec ball circuit with his daughter Bella. He coached the All-Star team, and then he's like, screw this rec ball stuff. I'm going back into travel ball. So um, when he asked us to join the team, we were like, heck yeah. Like, and then when he said, oh, I'm asking, so and so, so and so, and so and so to join us. And I think your eyes lit up too. You're like, oh, I get to play with those girls again, right? They,
Always love playing with my friends. I mean, I'm still young, so that was like it's a very crucial social point of a kid's life.
right.
So, I mean, all they want to do is play with their friends.
Yeah. So it was, as a father, I was like, you know, wow, this could go somewhere, right? Because you just got done playing with cotton candy crushers. I said it right this time.
Good, good.
Mom keeps making fun of me. Um, and you're successful. Then you did again. We played All Stars. We lost 3 games. You were the #1 pitcher at the time, doing well. Um, and we felt at the time it's like, okay, let's see where this goes. Let's try it out. And another reason why we chose to go this way is because of the organization, right? It was Team Mizuno just branched off from Batbusters, so the head of Team Mizuno was, he's, I guess you can call him a legend, but he, he's very successful as a travel ball coach. There's a lot of girls within that organization that are really good.
Hmm.
And you can touch about that a little bit, but we just want to kind of see, hey, let's try it out. Let's see if this is something that, right. And you didn't just play softball, right? So
No.
what were the other things that we kind of had you into as well?
So I think you guys, as parents, thought it was important that I explore all my options. So we had soccer, just running back and forth, scoring goals with just little kids, just running back and forth.
I have
I
a great
played
story about that if you want me to tell you, but go ahead.
um, I played water polo,
Yeah,
hated water polo.
you did?
I couldn't tread water to save my life.
Right,
I mean, I was a decent swimmer, but I couldn't tread water and throw a ball at the same time.
right.
Um, and then there was basketball,
Mhm.
which I think I enjoyed basketball a lot more than like any other things that I played.
Yeah,
I did play flag football, but that was later.
right.
And that was just mostly for fun. But basketball was definitely a really fun
Yeah.
other
So
option.
yeah, so a couple of stories. So the basketball one is important because um, I was a basketball coach for 30 years. I was actually the head basketball coach of the high school that you went to eventually. Um, and there was a parent that was in the basketball community, asked you to play in a travel basketball right after All Stars, right? I think you played
Hmm.
All Stars, and he asked you to be on the travel All Star travel basketball team.
Hmm.
And then this is the same time. We're like, okay, do we do travel softball or do you travel basketball? And in my head, I'm like, well, basketball, because your mom's 5'10", I'm 6 feet.
Yeah.
You were, I think, pretty tall at the time, and I'm like, well, that could be
For
pretty
10 years
cool.
old, I was a tall one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, that's pretty cool. Um, but I think you were better at softball, um, and I think you were leaning towards that way anyway. But the soccer story, I got to get back to the soccer story because it's funny.
I
Because
don't remember any soccer days.
right, but it goes to your competitiveness, right? Because you're probably, if not as competitive as mom.
Yeah.
Um, and so there was one Saturday. You again, this is when you're super young. There's no goalies, right?
Yeah.
And you scored like I think 7 or 8 goals. You were just like kicking butt. You're just going up and down. This is when you had the blue uniform on. It was
Yeah.
one of the cutest soccer pictures I've ever seen. But and then the next Saturday you scored 0, and
Right.
grandma was there, and you were bawling your head off. You were so upset that you didn't score a goal, and grandma was sitting there like, "It's okay, sweetie." But that just kind of shows like you're competitive, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of when we knew it's like, okay, this girl's serious about winning,
Right.
right?
But like I specifically remember I think my last ever basketball game that I played. And it was when we had to make a decision between travel basketball and travel softball.
Mhm.
And we were walking back to the car and it was like after that coach asked me to be on that travel team. And you're like, you got to pick now. Basketball season's over, you're getting into softball, like you got to pick. And I'm like holding the basketball and I was like, I'm going to play softball. And then you're like, okay.
Yeah,
And but now that I think about it, because you were a basketball coach for 30 years and you just love basketball,
yeah.
right? Still do? No?
I I love the X's and O's. And we're gonna get into it next episode actually. Um, but it was just a year after that
Hmm.
I fell out of love of coaching
Right.
for other reasons, not the X's and O's. X and O's I love doing. Um, I still love coaching, right? So I coach real estate investors now. So I love the aspect of coaching. I don't like some of the other things that come along with it.
But when it came to me having to make a decision and I say softball,
Hmm.
what would you say to, say, parents that are putting their kids in multiple sports to see what they like and what they don't like,
Hmm.
having to come, like, personally asking your son or daughter to make a decision and possibly giving up something that they love, or like I want to do both, but like say financially it doesn't work like that,
Right.
or time constraints it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Great question. Right. Because
Yeah.
I would have loved to just maybe coach you someday in basketball, but I ended up
Right.
coaching you in softball anyway. So, um, and again, great question because you're 9 years old. You're 9 freaking years old, and we're like, hey, you have to choose.
for the rest for the rest of your life this is going to
Right.
determine some characteristics about you.
Right. No,
So
so yeah,
say I played basketball, I would probably have some different characteristics about me than I do
right.
since I played softball.
Yeah. I personally think you were better you were better at softball. Like I felt because of your pitching was coming around. We had a great all-star season. You're going to be part of this great organization. Basketball wise, you were good, but it wasn't like you were just like super dominant, right?
I just
Um,
remember fouling everyone and being
yeah,
confused
exactly.
on why does that count as a foul? And I would get
Right.
frustrated with myself. But
Because you,
well, it was because I was tall for a
oh, you
10-year-old
froze.
and I don't know.
Hope we can come back. We can edit this.
What?
All right. Yeah, you froze. Sorry.
Oh.
We can edit it. Yeah, so I felt like you were better at softball. And then when we talked to Coach Chris and he said, okay, here's what it looks like. You're not going to have weekends. You're
Mm-mm.
going to have to go to, and we can talk about that with Team Mizuno, but, you're going to have to go to EM once a night. We had pitching lessons once a night. So 4 days a week, you were going to be gone
Yeah.
for long periods of time. So I think we felt that way. We were like, okay, well, we're leaning towards softball because you're number one, you're good at it. You're on the rise, right? You're one of the better pitchers out there. And then number two, it was a time constraint. There was no way we can do both. Because I knew travel basketball because I've been I've been a high school coach for years. I know the travel basketball circuit. I know how much time it takes. So there was no way we can do both. So we leaned towards softball because of I thought you were going to be better at it than you were at basketball.
So you would say it's important for parents to kind of recognize their child's ability in a sense,
Yeah, another great. So recognize, um, yeah, recognize their ability, and be honest with yourself,
right?
right? Because and I'm speaking to the parents out there, right? Because you're speaking to the girls that went through this process. I'm speaking to the parents that are going through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to take a step back and say, okay, is my daughter good enough to play at this level? Because for years, I mean, how many years of travel softball? 10? Yeah, 10 years
That
of
I
travel.
did.
Yeah. No, that we were part of 10 years of travel softball.
Oh,
I
I think it was 13.
No, you were 9 and you ended travel in 19. So it's 10 years.
Oh, so I'm on my 13th. Okay, yeah.
I'm talking travel, right?
Travel
So
ball. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm talking to those parents out there that were unrealistic about their daughters, and they felt that their daughter should play because of whatever reason, because they were hitting home runs in rec ball, or they
Or
were hitting home runs around.
say their parents grew up playing baseball or softball and they want their kid to be in that realm.
Right.
Right.
So
So
they
you grew up playing basketball doesn't
yeah,
doesn't mean that I'm going to be in love with basketball or be potentially good at it.
right. And that's why we gave you choices, right? That's why
Yeah.
we had you do different things. So at the end of the day, you had a choice of a sport that you wanted to do. Now, you were going to play sports, number
Right.
one. We just didn't know which one, right? So we ended up playing softball. Um, you were good. Other people were telling us you were good, so that's so we did it. But other parents, they don't see that, right? They don't step away and say, okay, my daughter, the reason why she is not in the lineup is because she's not good. And then you start seeing team hopping. We can get into that. We'll get into that in episode 4. But you see team hopping and stuff like that. But at 9 years old, you don't know, right?
I mean, there's also, I wouldn't say a fine line, but from my perspective too, you got to see that the child loves the game that they're playing. So, not only is there ability, but there's like passion towards it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at 9 years old, I had much, much more passion for softball
Mm-hmm.
than I did basketball. Basketball was just like, oh, let's go play and bounce the ball around and shoot and all this
And
stuff. But
foul.
and foul people out. I mean, I fouled out all the time. I
Right.
didn't get it, but basketball is fun. But on the other hand, I had much more love for softball and the process it took to become a good pitcher.
Yeah.
And I knew I wanted to do that from then on.
Yeah.
So for younger athletes, you said to be like realistic with yourself on your kid's ability. For the young athletes, you got to be realistic on what your passion is, or what level of love you have for that game. So whether it's basketball, water polo, soccer, blah blah blah, it's like you got it doesn't it's not only the ability and the natural athleticism that you have, but it's also how, like, will this my love for the game continue for almost like the rest of your life, basically.
Right. And we're gonna get into it, right? Because we've seen multiple girls fall out of love for various reasons, right?
Yeah.
So and then we're gonna get into that too. How I still during pitching I would pout and then give you the silent treatment, and then we had a aha moment on the dinner table. We'll talk about that later, but
Mm.
um yeah, so yeah, as a parent, you got to ask your kid, hey, like, is this what you want to do? Like, and if they say yes, then you support it. If they say no, then you move on. But you don't force them to do it.
No.
And too many parents I see out there in the travel ball, and it's not just softball. I see it in basketball. I see it in baseball that their parents just they force them to, because, like you said, I was a college athlete, back in the day, and you're gonna play baseball too, just like I did, right? Because boys idolize their dads, and the boys want to follow what their dads did when they grew up, right? Um, I didn't have a father, so I didn't, so I have no idea. So maybe my perspective on raising a kid is a little bit different from other fathers out there. Um, and that's why we gave you the choice, and you chose softball because you loved it. Part of it, I think, is have the girls, being around and cheering and doing all that kind of stuff. 'Cause you don't do that in basketball. You just there's 5-on-5, and you're up and down the basketball court,
Yeah.
foul people.
Another
With softball, there's you know
another
you
aspect of just running back and forth. It
right,
wasn't my thing. It wasn't
right.
my
All
thing.
right. So let's pivot to these practices, right?
Yeah.
So now these are intense practices. Your weekends are shot. It's a Saturday and Sunday. We have to get there early because you're a pitcher. So pitchers and catchers get there a half hour early. So we're you do your pitches, and then kind of describe a Chris Garcia practice if you can, if you remember.
Okay. So I'd say pitchers would get there around like 7:30.
Mm-hmm.
And then practice would start at 8, so 30 minutes of pitching for the pitchers. Um, I think you instilled in me the fear of being late
Yep.
at that age, so we would arrive at about 7:15 and get started right away. And so that would be the first portion of it. And I'd say practices would run about 5 hours long,
Mm-hmm.
to be on average 5 hours, maybe 6 if we weren't performing the way we should be performing.
Right.
But I mean, we would go hard on defense, and then we would end with some offense. Um I mean, at this age, I was definitely trying to play different positions too. I was also hitting at this age, so pitching, I did some third base,
Yep.
some hitting. So just keeping those skills alive for as long
Yeah.
as I could.
Yeah.
Um,
And then this is travel ball now. So now we're now these practices were closer. I think the following years when we started going out to Orange County and an hour away. But we started doing pitching lessons with Coach Susie. She was an hour away. You had to do it's called EM, which is the organization had to work out together. that was an hour away, right? So now we're traveling,
Yep.
at least 4 days a week. We're having to go somewhere for softball. Um, yeah, and they were intense, like defense, especially early on, because Chris knew that you're 9, you're not going to be hitting the ball over the fence, right?
Right.
So he really focused on defense and being perfect,
Yep.
right? And if you were not perfect, there was consequences, which most of
The
the girls
hill.
were not used to. Yeah, the hill.
There was a hill we had to run up, which
Well, your first was Shady Maple, which is you ran around the park.
oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
the hill was at the other
Well, then
the
we got introduced to 7 innings,
7 innings.
which is
Yeah,
running
so
with yeah.
now you're transitioning from rec ball to these very intense practices, and if you screwed up, there's consequences, right?
Right. And so we're getting into these harder practices now, and this is straight out of rec ball. Like, these girls are coming from rec ball, so some people didn't like it as much. But I never experienced the parent side of it. I just
Yeah,
saw like my friends going to other teams, and I'm being
yeah,
like really sad about it. I'm like, why did you leave? Why did you leave?
right. Oh yeah, first month there was 2 or 3 girls that they just quit. So I'm still friends with one of the with the original. Um, and, I actually saw him at dinner the other night. And he just I hated that team. He just despised that team, right? But
But why? Like,
yeah,
what's the difference between staying on that particular competitive team,
mhm,
especially like as a parent, like deciding, you know what, like this isn't right or this is blah blah blah.
right. So on our perspective, it was still kind of a rec ball mentality. Like they viewed Chris as like too hard, because Chris didn't, he didn't. There was no bullshit, right? It was this is how we're gonna do it. If you don't do it, there's consequences. Um, we're here to win, and so even when we went up to Oregon, I don't know if you remember, we were going up to Oregon, and that was the year that Oregon had the huge fires, and we were playing our rival. I forget what the team name was, but we played a rival team, but we had to keep it short because the smog, the smoke of the fire. We were on the verge of winning, but they cut the game short. So, and he was pissed. That's when I felt where parents, it started getting political. Like now it's like, okay, this guy's super intense, and then so what? And we're gonna get into it more with travel, but with coaches, travel ball coaches, a lot of times they bring girls on the team because of the parents, right?
Right.
If you can get the right parents, then you can make the team however you want, and it ended up being that way because we ended up getting the right parents and second year tens, but
Because parents, they're with their kid throughout the week.
yeah,
So if you're not implementing that sort of discipline that we put in on the weekends and that work on the weekends during the week,
yeah,
there's no improvement, there's no motivation basically. So you guys are a faucet into wanting that, like, to improve and wanting to work and wanting to get to that level. I mean, Chris was talking about us going to college at 9 years old.
yeah,
Like, if you want to be a college athlete, a D1 athlete, this is what you're going to have to do. This is the process you're going to have to take.
right.
And I'm not going to college for another 10 years.
You're
You
like, I'm
know?
9.
I'm 9. And I'm like, "Oh, like that's." But then at that age you start to kind of fantasize about, okay, like I can actually do this.
Yeah, because you're in an organization. Quite frankly, most of those girls in the organization end up going to college at high level.
They're playing
These
D1 now, they're playing pro level now.
not even D1, but they're winning rings, and they're
Mhm.
in the pros, right? So, um, yeah, so we can transition into that later. Um, but yeah, it got I think with you, because you're competitive, I think you liked that atmosphere because Chris put demands on you, and you're like, okay, if he tells me to do it, I'm going to do it because I'm competitive and like I'm supposed to do my homework, so I do my homework, right? Because we
Yeah.
we instilled that with you. It's like you're, we were just like you said, we disciplined you at home, meaning you got to get these things done. And then when you got to Chris, and Chris is like, okay, if you don't field these next 3 balls, you're gonna run a lap. You're like, okay, I'm gonna field these next 3 balls, right?
Mhm.
Um, but other girls couldn't handle that,
No. I
right?
mean, and
And the parents, right? The parents couldn't handle it either.
it's I mean, for like I try to instill this in my lessons that I teach now,
Hmm.
right? They're like 8, 9, 10, and you don't want to be with Chris. He was harsh and disciplinary and all of that stuff, but at the end of the day, he had love for every single one of those girls that was on that team.
Hmm.
And he treated all of us like he was his own daughter, and his daughter was on the team.
Yes.
Like, so, and you could feel that even as I was like a 9 or 10-year old, I could feel that through his coaching and through his teaching. I mean, for the young girls that are playing right now, it's important to recognize that with your coaches, and if it's one side and they're just disciplinary and like they don't, you can't sense that sense of care that's coming from them,
Hmm.
then it might be time to look elsewhere,
Hmm.
because that's super super important. And I don't like, for the girls that maybe left Chris's team, I I don't know if it was just like the disciplinary aspect, because
I think it was.
he did care and he always cared.
Yeah.
So it's important to have that sort of love within a coaching staff
Yeah.
and know that you're cared about, but also having that harsh disciplinary
Yeah.
coaching style, because I wouldn't be as competitive or as disciplinary on myself if it wasn't for those coaches.
Right. And Coach Al too, right? You don't
Yeah.
want to forget about Coach Al, because Coach Al, he was he would get on you too, but he'd also love you up and pull you aside and say, hey, you're doing great. Just keep your head in the game and stuff. So um, great stuff, Lace. I appreciate you being open about that, right?
Mhm.
Because it's very important to girls that not only are entering in the travel ball circuit. And don't be afraid if it doesn't feel right. Don't be afraid to look elsewhere, right?
And
'Cause-
and voice your concerns,
yeah.
because I mean, my perspective is different from your perspective.
Hmm.
So you could be seeing, "Oh, this is great, coaching, like, like practice perfectionism, all this stuff," but I am like terrified, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, it's definitely important to voice your feelings with your parents.
Great point. I was going to say your parents, right? Because some people, if you voice your opinion to the coach, it
It
might fall
doesn't
on deaf
go very
ears.
well. Yeah.
But no, yeah, because you might be if you're unhappy with the situation, but the parents see it a different way, but you're there to please your parents, so you stick with it because you don't want to disappoint your parents or whatever. But
Right. And that's
what
just,
we're saying is this: have those honest conversations,
yep.
right?
It's and that's going for when you're 9 years old, and even now when I'm 20 years old, turning 21 soon. Like,
Right.
you have to have those hard conversations, and it's just overall better for your mental and your athletic journey through life.
Well, and your relationship with your parents too, right?
Yeah.
As long as if you're honest with your parents and you have that communication, then you don't have that resentment later, right?
Right. Yeah.
So awesome stuff, Lace. I love seeing you every week. So hopefully everyone got some good stuff out of this. We will catch you on the other side of episode 4. Lace, I love you.
Love you. Gotta go give a presentation now.
Enjoy. I don't.
Yeah, but
All right, sweet. Love you.
love you.
Bye.
Bye.